I've been a pro editor for over 20 years, and when it comes down to it, there are 5 simple ideas that have made the biggest impact on my editing. Today, I'd like to invite you into my edit suite so I can share them with you in the context of a broadcast commercial I recently completed, in hopes that you can take those 5 ideas and use them in your own edits. Stick around to the end because I have some editing wisdom I'd like to share with you that was a real game changer for me. Let's start by taking a look at the spot.
Texans. 140 years ago, they invented Lone Star beer. To survive in this scorching habitat, they've made an unlikely ally, the armadillo. This creature saves parched locals from thirst by supplying them with their favorite beer. A toast to Texas hospitality. Make every beer a Lone Star.
What's the first thing you do when you get a new editing project? When I started out, I would just start throwing footage in the timeline because I was so eager to get going. I just loved editing so much I wanted to start. And I do think that's better than procrastinating, but I want to explain why it's still not ideal. The danger is this. Let's say you dive in, you're creating cut after cut. Maybe you're getting a collaborator involved like a director or a producer. Also, maybe you have a tight schedule, so you're getting caught up in sort of the chaos of a tight post-production schedule. And then somewhere toward the end, when you're close to the finish line, you finally have a chance to sit back and watch what you've made, and you watch it and you realize it's just not that good. It's a big pile of nothing. I'm getting a sinking feeling just thinking about this because I've been in this position many, many times, more so at the start of my career. As an editor, it's my goal to prevent that scenario from happening. And of all the things I've tried, here's the one thing that works best. Always understand the why of your edit before you begin. And for me, the why is the emotion I want the audience to feel as they're watching the edit. It's best if you write it down, and it's even better if you share it with your collaborator so you can both get on the same page and go toward that common goal. For this commercial, the director and I were focused on the emotion of excitement. It's a party after all. And then a sense of delight when the armadillo is introduced, a sense of dread when the partygoer makes a horrible mistake in front of everybody, and then a sense of joy when the armadillo saves the day. If you want to go deeper on the topic of emotion, you can download my free editing guide at the link in the description. You might be thinking, great, so I pick an emotion and I get after it. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but there's a problem. It should almost never be just a single emotion. One issue I see over and over with beginner editors, myself included when I started out, is what I like to call a one-note edit. It can be any format, corporate video, montage, documentary, but there's just one note or one emotion throughout the edit. Nothing really happens, nothing really changes. Here's something that sounds simple but can take years and years to sink in. Story is about things happening to people, and then the people change because those things happen. I don't care how long your story is or what format your story's in. As editors, we must fight for things to happen and for people to change. And if things are happening and people are changing, there will be more than one target emotion in your edit. That's why it can be helpful to build out the story structure and the emotional targets of your edit at the same time. Let's take a look at the story structure of this commercial. First, we're introduced to the normal world, which is a party atmosphere. It's exciting. And then we're introduced to a new character. The armadillo. This creature saves parched locals from thirst by supplying them with. And then we have a complication. The guy brings the wrong beer to the party. We have a climax where the armadillo changes that beer into Lone Star. And then now we're back to the normal world, but it's forever changed. So you have some emotional targets and a story structure. Now it's time to start putting things together. I can't tell you how many projects I've worked on that would have been saved had I started with those 2 ideas. But you might be thinking, what can I do to target those emotions? Well, I'm glad you asked, but let me start with a question. As an audience member, what's one thing that'll pull you out of a story? For me, it's when I get ahead of it, meaning I know what's going to happen next. As editors, we spend a lot of time practicing how to develop a steady rhythm or tempo in our edits, which is great. But the problem is when you stick with a rhythm or tempo for too long and the audience starts to expect it. As soon as they expect it, they get bored and you've lost them. One thing I teach is called rhythmic contrast, where you develop a steady rhythm or tempo, but then you change it unexpectedly. Not only will this keep the audience engaged, but you can use these moments to emphasize an emotion. But be careful not to overuse this technique and make sure the point of change happens at a point in the story that makes sense. Let's take a look at the different rhythms in this commercial. I first establish a nice brisk pace to set up this party scene, the emotion of excitement. And then I introduce some rhythmic contrast when I introduce the main character. If you see this shot, if you include the crash zoom in to the Dillo, is over twice as long as the previous shots. So I introduce the rhythmic contrast to introduce the new character. And then we're back to that faster rhythm I established at the beginning, but then I break it again. I slow it down again. At this point, the main complication of the story. And finally, the last shot, the joyful celebration of the beer turning into Lone Star, is one of the longest shots of the spot. And perhaps one of the most effective tools editors have to evoke emotion is the soundtrack. The music choice can do a lot of heavy lifting, but sound design can have a big impact as well. But there are a couple of things I see a lot with beginner editors, myself included when I started, when it comes to the soundtrack. The first thing is they'll pick a piece of music and they'll just let it play the entire time. This comes back to that idea of kind of a one-note edit. Also, the structure of the musical piece might not quite line up with the story of their edit. Let me show you what I did in this piece with the music to make it match the story and help evoke emotions. The music plays from the start and really helps nail that emotion of excitement. But then we have the music turning off, and that lines up with the biggest complication of the story, where this guy brings the wrong beer. It creates this awkward silence. And then when the armadillo saves the day and transforms that beer, we have the exciting music track start back up, which really helps sell that emotion of joy and celebration at the end of the spot.
A toast to Texas hospitality.
Another mistake I see beginner editors make is when they have an edit that is music-driven or voiceover-driven like this one, they will neglect adding specific sound design. And they're really missing out because specific sounds can help keep the audience engaged. It's introducing a new element. It can also guide the viewer's eye to different points in the frame. Let me show you what I mean. Just the subtle sound of the can being picked up draws your eye to it. The sound of the can coming out of the cooler. That subtle sound of the guy catching the beer.
This preacher saves
the beer can opening
by supplying them with their favorite beer.
Somebody in the party going, ugh, like the guy really messed up. That little sound really helps sell this part of the story. And finally, the climactic sounds of the beer transforming.
Make every beer a Lone Star.
And even on this last shot, you can hear the wakeboarder yell, woohoo! By now you might be asking, are we going to make some actual edits? Yes, we are. My last editing criteria is action, or where to cut. This is where most editing tutorials start, but for me, it's the least important criteria, because if you're targeting emotions, have a solid story structure, and you're evoking those emotions through rhythm and sound, you've already won. You almost can't mess it up at this point. But we can get the edits right too. Let me take you through the spot, and we'll go cut by cut, and I'll share what I was thinking when I selected each in and out point. Shot 1 to shot 2 is a match on action. The actor lifts the beer in the first shot and continues lifting it up in the second shot. This is a way to draw the viewer's eye to an object in the frame, and it also creates a very seamless cut. Then the actor, Brian is his name, looks over and points to his friend at the bar. And then we cut to that friend at the bar. This is often called a glance object cut. Somebody glances at something and then you cut to what they're looking at. Very effective. Then we do a hard cut to the beer in the cooler. And the focus of this shot is the beer being lifted out of the cooler. And then this cut here almost gives you the idea that the beer's lifted out and then thrown to this other guy at the party, which is kind of a cool effect. Catches the beer. The end action of this shot is the guy in the background settling into frame. And then we have a hard cut to the armadillo and a smash cut in to a close-up of the armadillo, which is really treated as one single shot. This is another glance object cut because we're seeing the armadillo's eyes squint. He's looking at something, and we reveal he's looking at a can of beer. The focus of the beer can shot is the opening of the beer. Then we cut to these two friends, and the focus of this shot is the man wiping his brow because he's parched, which lines up with the story of the voiceover. Then we cut wide to the party, and I cut into this wide shot to emphasize the awkwardness of his mistake. We whip pan over to the armadillo, zoom in, he works his magic, and then we have a graphic match of these two beers in the transformation, and an epic zoom out lifts the beer. That's the end action of this shot. Then we hard cut to the armadillo relaxing by the lake, and the end action of the final shot is this wakeboarder going by. There you have it, the 5 simple ideas that changed my editing forever. Target emotions, tell a story, and evoke those emotions through rhythm, sound, and action. And let me leave you with one more piece of advice. If you're thinking to yourself, I wish I had an editing project that was advanced enough or well-written enough or exciting enough to apply some of these concepts to, but I just don't have one. I want to stop you there. I don't care what you're editing. It could be a corporate video, a home movie, or just some stock footage you're cutting together for practice. As editors, we can and should always fight to have target emotions and a story where things happen and people change. Then use all of your other editing skills to support those two things. Do that, and you'll be in the top 1% of editors. If you got value out of this video, please subscribe, and you might want to check out my free editing guide, which you can download at the link in the description. And if you liked this video, you should watch this one next. Happy editing.